I discovered my father's journal, detailing how he'd been embezzling from my college fund for years. "He'll never notice," he wrote. "I kept quiet for 6 months. Yesterday, he called me 24 times after checking his investment accounts. 4 days ago, I discovered something that's turned my entire reality upside down. Don't even know if I'll post this when I'm done writing, but I need to get this out somewhere. It started when I was looking for some tax documents in Dad's home office. Mom, Gladys, mentioned he kept them in the bottom drawer of his desk. Normal stuff, right? I was just trying to finish my FAFSA for next semester because the deadline's coming up. Dad, George, was out golfing with his buddies, and Mom was grocery shopping, so I figured I'd just find it myself instead of waiting. So I'm digging through this cluttered drawer. Receipts, warranties for appliances we don't even own anymore. The usual dad filing system mess. And that's when I found it. A leather-bound journal tucked way in the back, behind some folders. Didn't think much of it at first. Honestly thought it might be some old work notes or something. But when I opened it, the first page I saw had my name on it, and the words "College Fund Adjustment," $1,200 next to it. Adjustment? What the actual hell is an adjustment? I flipped through more pages. More adjustment. $800 here. $1,500 there. Going back 3 freaking years. All with little notes like "transferred to personal investment account" and "redirected to tech stock." My heart was racing as I kept reading. And then I saw it. The line that made me want to punch through a wall. "Jared's too busy working night shifts at the gas station to ever check the actual numbers. He'll never notice these adjustments." Adjustments. That's what he calls stealing from his own son. Another gem. The kid thinks $30K is a huge college fund anyway. He has no concept of what education actually costs these days. I sat there for what felt like hours, just reading entry after entry. It wasn't just a few borrowings. This was systematic theft over years. I counted roughly $35,000 that he'd moved from my college fund into his investment accounts. Money I'd been told was not enough, which is why I've been working 2 jobs since junior year of high school. Money that was supposed to be my future. The worst part? I found entries where he talked about how he was going to make it all back and then some, with his market insights. But then I found later entries admitting losses. Big ones. My money? Gone. I managed to put everything back before my parents returned. Somehow acted normal through dinner while my mind was screaming. Dad had the audacity to ask if I was picking up extra shifts this summer to help with tuition. I wanted to flip the damn table. For the next 2 days, I dug deeper, used Dad's laptop when he was in the shower. He never logs out of anything. Checked all the accounts. It's all true. Every bit of it. The college fund he and Mom started when I was born, it should have had nearly $60K in it by now. Current balance, $22,345. Not even enough for 2 years at state. Meanwhile, he's got a personal investment portfolio worth over $120K, using my money to play the market, and losing a good chunk of it too, from what I can tell. I haven't confronted him, not yet. That would be too simple, too expected. He thinks I'm too stupid to check the numbers? Too busy working my ass off to notice? Fine. Let him think that. Instead, I've spent the last 4 nights learning everything I can about his accounts, his passwords, his security questions, his investment patterns. Dad's not exactly a cybersecurity expert. Uses the same password for everything. Mom's birthday plus our street number. How original. Here's where it gets interesting. I've also been teaching myself about day trading, investment strategy, market fluctuation, all that financial shit. Dad thinks I'm too dumb to understand. YouTube tutorials until 4 a.m. Reddit investment threads, financial forums, everything. My sister June noticed the dark circles under my eyes yesterday and asked if I was okay. Told her I was just stressed about finals, not ready to involve anyone else yet. This is between me and dear old Dad. Yesterday I set up my own investment account, used my emergency saving, $1,200 I've been hiding in my closet. I know it sounds crazy to risk it, but I need to understand how all this works from the inside. how he could gamble away my future so easily. My plan isn't to confront him, not directly, not yet. That would just get me a half-assed apology and maybe some lame promise to pay it back someday. No, he needs to feel this. He needs to understand what it's like to have your financial security ripped away by someone you trusted. So I've started making small changes to his accounts. Nothing obvious, just enough to create doubt, confusion, panic, a modified statement here, a changed password there. Small things that make him question his own memory, his own financial decision. And I've been dropping subtle comments at dinner. Things about the market looking unstable, about friends' parents losing money in certain sectors. Watching his face carefully as I plant these little seeds of worry. I've already set up redirects for his financial emails, created a dummy interface that shows his investments declining steadily. Small amounts at first, nothing to cause immediate alarm, just enough to make him uneasy. For 6 months, I'm going to watch him squirm, watch him panic as his precious investments seem to crumble, watch him realize that he's not the financial genius he thinks he is. And when he's at his lowest, that's when I'll show him the journal entries. That's when I'll let him know that his son, the one who would never notice, has been orchestrating his financial nervous breakdown. I know this sounds extreme, maybe even cruel, but you know what's cruel? Stealing from your kids' future while they work double shifts to make ends meet. Writing in your journal about how they're too stupid to notice. So that's where I am now. 4 days into this plan, already seeing him check his phone more often, frowning at notifications I've engineered. Already noticing him skipping his usual evening beer, staying up late with his laptop. It's only beginning. The next 6 months will be my masterpiece. I'll update when there's more to share. But trust me, there will be more. Update 1. It's been exactly 2 months since my last post about discovering my dad's journal where he documented stealing from my college fund. First off, thank you for all the support. Never expected thousands of comments. For those asking if I went to the police, nope. This isn't about getting authorities involved. This is personal. So, updates. Where to even begin? I haven't been sleeping much, maybe 4 hours a night, tops. My roommate Blake commented on how I looked like absolute shit yesterday, dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Yes, I tried. Don't judge. My grades are suffering too. Failed a midterm last week because I was up until 5 a.m. monitoring Dad's account activity instead of studying. But honestly, worth it. The psychological warfare is working better than I ever imagined. Dad, George, has lost about 7 pounds. Mom mentioned it at Sunday dinner last weekend, saying how his clothes look baggy and asking if he's been skipping lunch. He mumbled something about stress and market volatility. I just sat there, stabbing my meatloaf, thinking, that's right, asshole, this is just the beginning. Let me break down exactly what I've been doing. First, I set up a sophisticated system of fake email notification, created dummy accounts that look exactly like his investment platforms, sending him updates about unusual account activity and concerning market trends affecting your specific holdings. Nothing too dramatic at first, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. I've been logging into his accounts every few days, always using incognito mode and a VPN, I'm not stupid, and making small changes to his dashboard numbers, shaving off 0.5% here, 1.2% there, just enough that he thinks he's losing money, but not enough to make him think he's being hacked. The beauty is in the subtlety. The really clever part? I set up a script that automatically changes certain numbers on his screen only when he's viewing them from his home IP address. So if he tries to show his financial advisor these losses, everything looks normal on their end, making him question his own sanity, priceless. Dad's been carrying his anxiety around like a backpack full of bricks. Last week, during dinner, Mom asked why he's checking his phone every 5 minutes. He snapped at her, something he rarely does. June, my sister, texted me later asking if I knew what was wrong with Dad. I played dumb, told her maybe it's a midlife crisis or something. The irony of calling it a crisis when I'm the one creating it, chef's kiss. I've also been casually dropping financial fear bombs at every opportunity. 2 weeks ago, I mentioned how a guy from my econ class lost a ton of money in tech stocks. Dad nearly choked on his pasta. Last week, I brought up an article I read about how certain investment platforms have been experiencing glitches that affect account balance. The look on his face, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom so I could laugh. The collateral damage is starting to concern me a bit, though. Mom seems genuinely worried. She pulled me aside yesterday to ask if I'd talk to Dad because he's been waking up at 3 a.m. to check his laptop, and it's disrupting her sleep. I promised I would, LOL, while wondering if this revenge is hurting her too much. But then I remembered the $35,000 plus of my money that he stole, and my sympathy evaporated like morning dew in a fucking desert. June is definitely caught in the crossfire. She mentioned Dad snapped at her for playing music too loud when she was barely making any noise. She's walking on eggshells around him. Part of me feels bad about that. A small part. The rest of me remembers those journal entries where he laughed about my ignorance while stealing my future. There was a particularly satisfying moment last week that I have to share. I engineered a fake notification about one of his biggest holdings dropping 12% overnight. He spent 3 hours on the phone trying to reach customer service, which was closed because it was 5 a.m. I could hear him pacing in his study, cursing under his breath. When he finally got through to someone, they obviously told him everything looked fine on their end. The confusion on his face was chef's kiss magnificent. Dad's started selling off some of his underperforming investments, ones that aren't actually underperforming at all. He's making terrible financial decisions based on false information, which is exactly what I wanted. He's panic selling at losses that don't exist, then reinvesting in what he thinks are safer options. It's like watching someone play chess against themselves while I secretly move pieces when they're not looking. The biggest challenge has been maintaining my poker face. When Dad starts ranting about market manipulation during dinner, I have to bite the inside of my cheek until I taste blood just to keep from smirking. When he asks if my investments class has covered anything about unusual market patterns, I have to give the most boring, generic answers possible while screaming internally with laughter. Yesterday marked a new phase in my plan. I made it look like his retirement account dropped 8% in a single day. Not enough to be obviously fake, but enough to hurt. That evening, Dad was on the phone with his brother for over an hour, discussing financial irregularity and asking if he'd experienced anything similar. His brother, who knows nothing about investing, offered some generic advice that I could tell just frustrated Dad more. Mom found Dad asleep at his desk this morning. Spreadsheets and financial statements scattered everywhere. She took a photo and sent it to the family group chat, saying how concerned she was about his obsession. I replied with a sympathetic emoji while mentally high-fiving myself. The guilt comes in waves, usually late at night when I'm executing some new aspect of my plan. Sometimes I wonder if I'm becoming as bad as him, but then I remember, I'm not stealing from anyone. I'm just creating the illusion that he's losing what he already has. And some of that money was mine to begin with. This isn't theft. It's delayed justice. Some nights I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Then I reread the copies I made of his journal. The entry where he wrote about using some of my college money for a golf trip to Myrtle Beach. The one where he complained about having to waste money on my education when I probably won't even graduate. The rage comes flooding back, drowning any hint of compassion. June asked me yesterday if I thought Dad might be having an affair. Apparently, Mom thinks his secretive behavior with his phone and laptop points to something sketchy. I nearly burst out laughing, told her I doubted it, but didn't elaborate. The fact that his financial paranoia is causing marriage tension is an unexpected bonus. Yeah, I know that sounds harsh. Sue me. This morning, I executed what I'm calling the master stroke. After 2 months of small, gradual manipulations, I made it look like his entire tech stock portfolio, the largest part of his investments, crashed 68% overnight. A devastating, but just barely believable market catastrophe. I went to bed at exactly 2:13 a.m. after setting everything up. Woke up at 7 a.m. to my phone buzzing like crazy. 24 missed calls from Dad between 7:13 a.m. and 7:45 a.m. 24 in 32 minutes. Plus 15 text messages asking me to call him immediately. I haven't responded to any of them. Let him stew in his panic. Mom called around noon saying Dad was having some kind of breakdown and had called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. She asked if I could come home this weekend to help figure out what's going on. I told her I would, trying to sound concerned and confused. This weekend I'm bringing all the evidence, the journal, the account statement, everything. I'm going to wait until he's at his absolute lowest point, convinced he's lost everything, and then I'll reveal that not only has he not lost anything, but that his son, the one he thought was too stupid to notice his theft, has been orchestrating his psychological torment for months. Will his marriage survive when Mom learns what he did? Will June ever look at him the same way? Will he finally understand what it feels like to have your future stolen by someone who's supposed to protect you? Don't know. Don't care. Justice is coming, and it's going to be glorious. I'll update after the weekend. This endgame has been 2 months in the making, and I can hardly contain myself knowing it's finally here. Update 2. I've been staring at this blank text box for almost an hour trying to figure out where to start. My hands are still shaking, not from anger this time, but from pure adrenaline aftermath. The confrontation happened. The fucking confrontation happened, and it was both more and less than I expected. First, thank you to everyone who's been following this twisted journey. Your comments kept me focused when I started having doubts. Special shout out to you, Revenge Serves Raw, who predicted almost exactly how my dad would react. So, the weekend. I drove home Friday night, arriving around 9 p.m. The house felt off, like when you walk into a room right after people were arguing about you. Mom, Gladys, greeted me with this forced cheerfulness that immediately set off alarm bells. June was nowhere to be seen, apparently holed up at her friend Ramona's house to study. Translation: avoiding the hellscape our home had become. Dad looked wrecked, like genuinely concerning. Bloodshot eyes, 3-day stubble, wearing the same rumpled polo shirt he'd had on during our last video call. He barely acknowledged me when I walked in, just this vague grunt from behind his laptop where he was frantically clicking through tabs. That night I barely slept, kept thinking about all the potential ways the confrontation could go. At 3 a.m., I heard him shuffling down the hallway to his study, heard the creak of his desk chair, the soft, desperate tapping of keyboard keys. He was still trying to figure out what happened to his money, the money that was perfectly fine, the money that included thousands stolen from me. Saturday morning, Mom made pancakes like everything was normal. Dad didn't eat, just stared at his coffee, phone in hand, refreshing something every few seconds. June texted saying she'd be home for dinner. That's when I decided dinner would be the moment. I spent the day pretending to study while actually perfecting my presentation. Yes, I made an actual presentation, printed screenshots of his journal entries, account statement, timeline of his theft, all organized in a folder labeled College Fund Documentation in big red letters. The most surreal part of the day, Dad asked me to look at his laptop because he thought it might have a virus, causing financial websites to display incorrect information. The irony, I pretended to check, told him everything seemed fine, and suggested maybe he contact customer support again. Watching him spiral while I played concerned son was, honestly, better than any drug. Finally, June arrived for dinner. Mom had made Dad's favorite, pot roast with those little roasted potatoes, comfort food for her clearly troubled husband. If she only knew why he needed comforting. We all sat down. Dad was still checking his phone under the table. Mom kept trying to make conversation about my classes, June's debate team success, anything to seem normal. The tension was so thick, you could cut it with the butter knife I was gripping way too hard. And then, the perfect opening. Dad mentioned something about possibly needing to make some financial adjustments and tighten our belts for a while, that he'd had some unexpected losses. I let the word hang in the air for 3 full seconds. Adjustments, the exact word he'd used in his journal when documenting his theft from my college fund. I stood up, walked to my backpack by the door, retrieved my folder, returned to the table while 3 pairs of eyes followed me in confusion. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, just placed the folder in front of him and told him I knew everything about the adjustment, about the $35,000 plus he'd stolen from my college fund over the years, about his journal entries mocking how I'd never noticed his face. I wish I could bottle that expression and save it forever. Pure shock transitioning to confusion, transitioning to the dawning horror of realization. Mom asked what I was talking about. I slid her the first journal entry photocopy, the one where he wrote about moving $1,500 from my college fund to his personal investment account. Because the kid works at the gas station, he'll never know the difference. June grabbed another page. Her face went from confused to disgusted in about 5 seconds. Dad started stammering, tried claiming the journal was just him thinking through scenarios, not documenting actual actions. Tried saying I was misinterpreting things. Classic gaslighting 101. That's when I dropped the bomb, explained calmly, eerily calmly according to June later, that there was nothing wrong with his investment account. No losses, no crashes, no technical glitches. That I'd been systematically manipulating what he saw on his screens for months, that his financial panic was entirely engineered by me, by his son, the one he thought was too stupid to notice money disappearing. Mom started crying. Not delicate tears, full-on, body-shaking sob. June got up and moved to stand behind my chair, literally and figuratively taking my side. Dad just deflated, like someone unplugged him from a power source. He tried one more desperate angle, asked how I could do this to my own father, said I'd put him through hell, that he hadn't slept properly in weeks, that he'd been having panic attacks. And that's when I completely lost my shit. I pulled out my phone, showed him my college tuition bill, showed him my student loan statement, showed him my work schedule, 30 hours a week on top of full-time classes, told him about the research opportunity I'd had to turn down because I couldn't afford to reduce my work hours, about the study abroad program I couldn't even apply for, real consequences of his theft. Mom looked at him with an expression I've never seen before, not just anger, something deeper, like she was seeing a stranger wearing her husband's face. She asked him how much he took. When he wouldn't answer, I told her, $35,768 over 3 years. The silence after that number was deafening. You could literally hear the refrigerator humming from the kitchen. Then June asked the question I hadn't even thought to ask. What did he spend it on? That's when shit got even more real. Dad mumbled something about investment. June pressed harder. Eventually it came out. Golf trips with friends, a weekend in Vegas, a gaming PC he kept in his friend Blake's garage, and, the kicker, a loan to his brother that was never repaid. Mom stood up so fast her chair fell backward, told June and me to go for a drive, said she needed to talk to Dad alone. The look in her eyes scared even me. June and I drove to the local ice cream place, neither of us hungry, but needing somewhere to go. She kept asking questions, how long I'd known, how I'd pulled off the fake investment losses, whether I felt bad about it. I didn't feel bad, still don't. Maybe that makes me a sociopath. Maybe that makes me someone who finally stood up for himself. IDK. When we got back 3 hours later, Dad's car was gone. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine and red eyes. She told us Dad would be staying at a hotel for a while, that she'd made some things very clear to him. Sunday morning, Dad texted all 3 of us a group message saying he wanted to meet at the house to discuss a way forward. Mom replied that she'd allow it, but only if he came prepared to make things right. He showed up looking like death warmed over, sat at our kitchen table, and laid out his proposal. 1. He would sell his car and golf clubs immediately to start repaying me. 2. He would get a second job to accelerate repayment. 3. He would sign over his entire investment portfolio to Mom's control. Mom added condition 4. Therapy. Non-negotiable. I sat there watching this man, this stranger who shared my DNA, promising to make amends, and I felt nothing. not satisfaction, not closure, just emptiness where the rage used to be. Mom asked what I wanted. Did I want to accept his proposal? Did I want to press charges? Apparently, she'd talked to her friend, who's a lawyer, and there were potential legal options. I told them I needed time to think, that I'd decide by the end of the week, that in the meantime, I expected full documentation of every financial account, with my name removed from anything he could access. Dad nodded like a broken bobblehead doll. Just empty agreement. I drove back to campus Sunday night, and that's where I am now, trying to process everything. June's been texting me constantly, oscillating between supporting my revenge and worrying about the family breaking apart forever. Mom called this morning to say that Dad had already listed his car online and dropped off his golf clubs at a consignment store. The thing is, I don't care. I truly don't. The money matters. I need it for school. But the relationship? That died the moment I read those journal entries. The moment I saw how little he respected me. How easily he sacrificed my future for his present wants. Was the revenge worth it? The weeks of sleep deprivation? The failed midterm? The constant planning and plotting? The look on his face when he realized that the son he thought was too stupid to notice had been orchestrating his financial panic for months. Yeah, it was worth every sleepless night. I don't know what happens next. Don't know if I'll accept his repayment plan or go nuclear with legal options. Don't know if my parents' marriage will survive this. Don't know if June will ever fully understand why I did what I did. What I do know is that I'll never again let someone steal from me and laugh about it. Never again be the punchline in someone else's journal. So that's it, Reddit. The conclusion to my revenge saga. Not the clean, perfect ending some of you wanted. No tearful reconciliation. No, we're closer than ever now bullshit. Just broken trust and consequences. But you know what? Sometimes that's justice enough.